Are you happy? Not just okay, not just managing life, but truly happy. Sarvebhya Namaskaraha, I'm Archna, Murthy, a Vedic Astrologer and a Vastu consultant. On this channel, I simplify the wisdom of our scriptures and show how astrology can help us better understand ourselves and the challenges we face in life. Today, let's explore what your horoscope says about happiness. After all, every one of us seeks happiness. We naturally move towards what gives us peace of mind and fulfillment. Yet there are phases in life when that happiness feels distant and we struggle to understand why. That's where astrology becomes valuable. It doesn't simply predict events, it acts like a mirror, helping us understand our own emotional patterns. You know, I find it fascinating that in astrology, out of the 12 houses in a horoscope, there is one entire house dedicated to Sukha or happiness. Can you believe that? Centuries ago, our scriptures recognized the importance of happiness. Today, psychology talks about happiness quotient and even ranks countries based on well-being. But astrology had already dedicated the entire house to understanding our inner peace. But today, I don't want to talk about happiness at the level of society. I want to talk about happiness at an individual level, because every one of us subconsciously attaches our happiness to something. For some it is their career, for others it is their health, their parents, their marriage, their children, or even their home. We may not even realize we have done it, but the horoscope reveals it very clearly. The fourth house does not simply tell us whether we'll have comforts in life. It also shows where our mind seeks happiness and what affects our peace of mind the most. Does astrology remove our problems? No. Every horoscope has challenges, but astrology helps us understand why certain situations disturb us more than others, where we become emotionally attached and where we unknowingly place our happiness. Sometimes, simply becoming aware of that pattern is the first step towards greater peace. Let me explain this through a few real life examples. This client came to me when she was 42 years old. Her entire distress revolved around the liabilities on her house. When I looked at her horoscope, it immediately made sense. Her happiness lord was placed in the house of liabilities, which we call Runa. Of course, the actual events were triggered by her dasha and transits, but because her peace of mind was so closely tied to this area of life, the liabilities weren't just a financial burden, they became an emotional burden. So in her case, happiness had become anchored to one thing, her home and the debt associated with it. Now let's look at another client. This gentleman reached out to me when he was 51. His happiness was not tied to money. In fact, he was financially well settled and had a flourishing career. His happiness was tied to himself, his thoughts, his habits, his expectations, his relationships. If life went according to his plans, he was happy. If it did not, he wasn't. Interestingly, Guru in the first house tends to magnify a person's principles and thought process. If the thinking is positive, it becomes a great strength. But if the thinking turns negative, that too gets magnified. Over the years, it wasn't lack of success that affected him. It was his own attitude and decisions that slowly affected his personal relationships. Now, this client also came to me at the age of 42. Now, look at her fourth house. It's extremely crowded. 4 out of the 9 planets in her horoscope are sitting in the house of happiness. Generally, when the fourth house is simple or associated with benefic influences, people tend to accept life as it comes. They don't constantly question everything. They don't resist every situation. But here, the story was different. She had a successful career. Financially, she was doing well. She had a good circle of friends. Yet, she was deeply unhappy. Her desires around her personal life remained unfulfilled. That led to constant overthinking, disappointment, frustration, and eventually a vicious cycle. There are ways to work through patterns like these, but unless we are willing to look within, lasting happiness becomes difficult. In her case, the expectation was still that everyone else should change. Now let's look at a much simpler happiness profile. This client's happiness lord is exalted. It sits with the Lagna in a friendly sign with only one mild malefic influence. Does that mean life is perfect? Not at all. She too is going through a difficult dasha and a few external situations are affecting her. But the difference is this. Her foundation is stable. She is open-minded. She accepts life more easily. She does not allow every situation to disturb her inner peace. That makes all the difference. If you notice, all 4 people experienced challenges in life. None of them had a perfect horoscope or a perfect life. The real difference wasn't the presence of problems. Every one of them did. It was where their mind had placed its happiness. For some, one area of life became so important that every event there disturbed their inner peace. That's what makes studying the 4th house so fascinating. While preparing this topic, I went through several horoscopes from my consultations. One pattern became very clear. Finding examples of people who had unknowingly attached their happiness to one aspect of life was actually very easy. Finding examples of people who were simply content, easygoing, and able to take life as it comes was surprisingly difficult. Perhaps that's the reality of the fast-paced, instant gratification world we live in today. We are constantly chasing the next achievement, the next relationship, the next milestone, believing that happiness lies there. The truth is, none of us remain in a state of happiness all the time. Life moves through different phases and challenges are inevitable. But understanding why certain situation affects us so deeply can change the way we respond to them. Perhaps that's why people continue to place their faith in astrology, not just to know what will happen, but to better understand themselves. And I think that's one of the greatest gifts our scriptures offer us. So let me ask you, where is your happiness anchored? Is it your career, your family, your relationships, your health, or something else? I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments. And if you have ever wondered what your own 4th house says about your happiness, astrology can help you understand that. ಧನ್ಯವಾದः.